I haven't made any serious videos in a while, huh? Well, I want to start reviewing games again, and I think I should start by doing a Dragon Ball marathon. I plan on reviewing the Dragon Ball beat 'em up / action adventure games, not Dragon Ball Z or any of the RPGs. And I think it's time to kick things off with the first game in the marathon, Dragon Ball Shenron no Nazo for the NES. Let's get started. Dragon Ball Shenron no Nazo is an action game based off of the Dragon Ball series released in 1986 in Japan. The game was developed by Tosei Software Company and was the first Dragon Ball game to be released and distributed by Bandai. Now, unlike most Dragon Ball games that were made before the mid-90s, this game was actually localized in both America and Europe. In America, the game was called Dragon Power to prevent licensing issues, while the European version stayed the same. The story is a pretty inaccurate retelling of Dragon Ball, since the game was released when the series was still airing and when the manga was still being written. While it remains accurate in the beginning, the story is no longer accurate after the Pilaf saga. An example of this is Master Roshi telling Goku to fight Major Metallotron, Bouillon, and Yamcha during his training. That never happens in the show. So, if you were to play this game to learn about Dragon Ball, don't bother. In fact, why would you be playing this game to know about that? Anyways, let's move on to the presentation and music. Now, I think the presentation is okay, considering it was an early NES title, but it definitely hasn't aged well. The character sprites are okay since they are distinguishable, and you can tell who they are. But some sprites look a bit goofy. The stages, however, aren't too pleasant to look at. I'm not a fan of how plain it looks, and also not a fan of the color choices made. So really, it's okay at best. The music is pretty bad in my opinion, since there are only a few tracks in the game. I think the Dragon Ball theme song is fine in 8-bit, but the stage music loops and it's just annoying. What's even worse is that the music resets when you enter a new room, and that bothers me a lot. So yeah, you shouldn't play the game for the music or the presentation. Now, let's talk about the gameplay. And oh boy, do I have a lot to say about the gameplay. Let me just say this right now. The gameplay is not good at all. Now, I'll give it some props. You can move in 8 directions, and the controls are simple. That's all I got. The hit detection in this game is awful, because Goku's punches are so small. You'll pretty much be getting hit by enemies most of the time. Maybe if you're careful enough, you won't get hit, but for me, that's not the case. If you get the power pole, the hit detection is slightly better, since you have a bigger hitbox. The only way you can get the power pole, however, is through capsules, which are either dropped by enemies when you have a certain amount of points, or by finding it in a hidden room. The problem with these capsules, however, is that they're random. You have no guarantees of getting what you want. Some items you can get besides the power pole include the Nimbus, a speed boost, the Kamehameha, some points, and some food. You'll only want half of this junk. The Kamehameha makes the fighting slightly better since you can hit enemies at a distance. The only problem is that it's limited. You'll also want food most of the time, however, since your life bar is also a time limit, which is awful. This means that while you just stand there, move around, or do anything at all, your health constantly goes down. If you have 3 points of health left, you have no hope of accomplishing anything. This is what makes the gameplay incredibly difficult, and even worse than before. This means that you have to constantly focus on your health, look for food, and avoid getting hit, which is difficult in this game since the hit detection sucks, as I said before. Now, I would explain the other items, but there's no point. They're useless most of the time. Now, what I've mostly been talking about is the overhead gameplay. There is another gameplay style which is more or less similar to a one-on-one fighter. These sections suck, even more so than the overhead section. This is because the hit detection is somehow worse, and the enemies have better hitboxes than you. All these reasons are why I never bothered getting past Yamcha stage, which is only the 3rd chapter of the game. It's just a pain. I think it's time I give my final thoughts. Honestly, I did want to enjoy this game, but I can't. I can get past the story being inaccurate, but everything else is just so flawed. There are a few good things about it, like the presentation being okay, and the 8-bit version of the Dragon Ball theme song being pretty good, but the negatives outweigh the positives so much. If you have the patience to beat this game, then I applaud you, but for me, I can't recommend this game to anyone. My final score for the game is a 2 out of 9. The game just wasn't a fun experience. Yeah, I'm gonna start scoring games out of 9 now, since I think it's easier to do than scoring games out of 10. Anyways, next time, I'll be reviewing what I personally think is one of the best Dragon Ball games ever made, and that's Dragon Ball Advanced Adventure for the GBA. See you guys then.